America cannot stop brutalizing black people because it has never existed without doing so. That's a hell of a fucking quote that I received while talking to Chatty G. And I know people feel some type of way about Chatty G, and I'll just say this. I know what it is, I know what it isn't. For me, it is a tool. It is a reflector. It is where I go and share my thoughts. It is where I go and ponder. And so today I was pondering the current status, the current vibration of humans, especially here in the US. I was just thinking about how we're operating as a people, what we're dealing with right now, this seeming crisis that we are in. And as I was considering, I'm like, how the fuck did we get here? How did we end up in a space, in a position where it is crumbling so quickly? The mask has completely slipped off to the face. Actually, it's been ripped the fuck off. And we see exactly what it is and what it isn't. And I'm like, how did we get here? And my original thought was like, is there something wrong with white people? Like genetically, like inherently wrong with Europeans? Because as I was thinking about historically, colonization and everything else, and not to say that any other nation, ethnic group, race, or whatever hasn't been on some other shit, hasn't been brutal, hasn't enslaved folks or any of that. Yes, that has happened, but it's been unique when it comes to how Europeans have done it, right? They do it with precision. They've done it with such gravitas. And I'm like, how did we get here? What's really going on? And that's a whole different conversation because I went down such a rabbit hole, like historically, looking at the Ice Age and all types of stuff. But what I've come to understand about the U.S. and specifically black folks is that the history of the United States is rooted in a festering sore. It is rooted in infection. And what I mean by that is that how can you have a constitution that simultaneously says that all men are created equal while saying another group of human beings are less than a whole person? What, they are like 3/4 human or whatever the fuck it said? Like, how does that even happen? Unless you give yourself a reason, unless you conjure up something that gives you an excuse to drastically and inhumanely exploit a group of people. So the very foundation, the very fabric of the United States is rooted in, I don't even have the word to really describe it except to call it an infection, to call it an infestation, to call it a virus, right? It's sick. The very fabric of the United States is sick. And there's this web of systems that have been created to mask the infection. It reminds me of back in the day when groups of people, in order to hide the stench of their own infections and rotting skin, they would put on perfume. And that is how I consider the American dream, quote unquote, to be. It is perfume on an infection. And the skin is rotting away. And we're seeing just how rotten, that's the word, rotten the root of this system, this country truly is. And it's like there's more and more being done to try and recalibrate something that was never aligned. It's so interesting to see the foundation is crumbling, and there's this desperate need, this desperate attempt to take those crumbling pieces and rebuild to, quote unquote, make America great again, when in reality it was always rotten. And again, this isn't to say that the United States has not subjugated or oppressed or done wrong other groups of people, because they absolutely have. But what is different is that the blacks that were brought here, and that's a whole different conversation about whether or not we were brought here, if there were some of us already here, different conversation. But those they brought were a what? A necessary part of the program. They needed us to build this country. And in order to, I guess, help them sleep at night, the lie they told themselves were that we were less than. And the more we prove them wrong, the more we do things that highlights, that spotlights our inherent genius and brilliance, is a existential threat to the very idea that white folks are superior. Because that is the lie that over centuries, white folks have told themselves, specifically Europeans, which gave them an excuse to go colonize and pillage and all of the things. And again, I went down a deep rabbit hole as to what was that really about. And in that research, I was able to, you're going to hear all types of trains, planes, and automobiles in these videos because I live by a metro station. I keep my windows open because I like fresh air. So you hear all the ambient noise. Please enjoy. But anyway, in my research, which I'll share at some point, I learned some things that gave me a sense of empathy, that helped me understand what was really happening. And it is so rooted in trauma and scarcity. It's so interesting. But again, I think I've talked about that in a different recording, so I don't want to talk about it too much here. But we're going to dive deep into that one because it's so needed to understand the nuance, right? Because what the powers that be are banking on now is all of this division. You got white folks against black folks. You got black men against black women. You got, Latin folks and Hispanic folks against other minorities. And you got po folks against, and it's all strategic. It's all meant to make us forget the fact that there are these few people in power attempting to hold on to a system that keeps those people in power, right? And that the majority of us are subjugated to whatever shit they come up with, right? Christian nationalism or whatever. But my point was that, and I didn't went all over a couple of different tangents because I've been thinking thoughts, right? And I just really feel like this new way of communicating, or me returning rather to this way of communicating, is needed and necessary at this point in time. Why? I couldn't tell you. But I feel like it is. And so I am really leaning into moving by intuition. And this is where I am. But the thing I came to is what's really going on with the U.S. right now, and why specifically are and were black folks so persecuted and singled out, right? When it came to how we were crushed, whenever we got our shit together, whenever we came together collectively, we had Black Wall Street and we had all these different things, and they would bomb us and they would burn our shit to the ground because our brilliance, our capacity to come together and be united and be successful and functional and stable is a direct challenge to the very American fabric. Because if we are able to excel, if we have genius, and your whole belief system is that you are superior because someone else is inferior, if those people who are deemed inferior actually show themselves to be as good, if not better, then what does that say about you, about the system, about supremacy? And so in order to keep this facade of supremacy running and working, you have to continue to keep your foot on the neck of the people who at one point you even convinced a nice amount of them and the world that they were inferior. So now we have caricatures. Now we have even us, even black folks. So I include myself in that. And that makes me sad too, when we are part of the problem, when we help perpetuate the bullshit, when we help to perpetuate the nonsense by how we show up in the world, that makes me sad. And I also get it. I understand it because collectively, as a community, as a people, I can only imagine the epigenetics, right? The echo of trauma that lives within our bodies, that lives in our DNA, that lives in our blood, that says every time we move as a people, every time we come together and we excel, we get crushed. We get infiltrated. We get assassinated. And that's hard. That's a lot. For us as a people to push past that, to have the courage to say, you know what, that's happened in the past. We're going to continue to do it. We're going to continue to strive for better. But if you can take a shortcut, if you can get a bag by tap dancing and doing the jazz hands, if you can get a check by selling not just yourself out, but your whole community out, people that look like you out, or if you're tired, if you've just checked the fuck out. Because your body remembers, your spirit remembers, your soul remembers what happened last time we as a people came together and were thriving. It was a threat. It was a threat to the very fucking fabric of this country. Because unlike others, where within indigenous folks, they fucking erase. So I pray that all indigenous people here in the U.S. are maintaining their stories, are sharing it with the youth, are keeping their languages and their customs alive. When we think about the breadth of Asia and all of the different people who have come to the U.S. from there, I pray that they have a sense of belonging because they've been othered. What do they call it? The model minority. How much pressure and fuckery is that? Where you are being pitted against everyone else, every other minority. And so you're othered on every side. How fucked up is that? For our Hispanic and Latin folks, the immigrant that is the boogeyman coming to steal the black jobs, quote unquote, and everyone else it's so much fuckery. No one has been given a reprieve. No one has missed this brush of savagery from this country when it comes to the different peoples who are here. However, the unique experience of Black folks is what this country was built on. It was built on our backs and on this belief that we were less than, that we weren't even human. And the more we prove and show out that that is not the case, the more threatened this existential crisis gets bigger, it gets louder, it gets meaner. And I say to that, fuck them. Keep being excellent. Keep sharing our customs. Keep our language alive. Keep our culture alive. I hope one day this division that they've seeded and exploited, that we see it for what it is. I know that takes courage. I know that takes a lot. And I'm still hopeful. Maybe I'm a fucking fool. But I'm still hopeful that we'll get through this. We'll get past this. Because to me, this is the last breath. This is like the death rattle of a system collapsing and dying. My hope is that we are not all crushed into rubble. That as this collapse, as this caves in on itself, that there's enough of us left to move all that shit out the way, because I don't even want us to use any of them motherfucking materials. They're all tainted, right? And we work in concert with Mother Earth, with Mother Gaia, and create something beautiful, something collective, something communal, something cyclical, where leadership and partnership is shared. That is my hope. Because America can't stop brutalizing Black people, because there's never been a time where it didn't.